Smash, smash, smash!
Hello? It's the fish calling. Thanks so much for tuning into another video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a how to prepare cut bait, some tips and tricks on how I like to make my meat. Phrasing. Okay, prepare meat for downrigger fishing, salmon fishing, cut bait. It's all going down today, as well as a little update on just what's going on here. See behind me, got quite a few things going on. Jolly Green is chilling. I got the check, I got the pegboard, we got some rods, we got some downriggers. Spring is about to kick off here in Niagara, and it's a happy, exciting time. So enough of the jibber jabber. Let's get to making some herring strips. So I should probably mention some of the really key ingredients here. Distilled water, you're going to need some of that. You're going to need kosher salt. And don't use regular table salt. Don't use regular tap water. It's important to use the distilled water and the kosher salt. I don't know all the chemistry behind it. I don't know why it works, but it does. So don't mess around with it. Use those two things. Now another thing that you're going to need is some borax. And if your mom, girlfriend, aunt, uncle, neighbor, friend doesn't have borax, go out to the grocery store and get some. It also works great when you're curing your eggs if you're salmon fishing in the fall, or if you're steelhead fishing. It's a great way to cure your eggs. So kosher salt, distilled water, borax, three main ingredients. You'll also need a measuring cup. That's going to basically just measure those three ingredients to make sure that you have a good brine. Other than that, you need a container that you can put your herring strips in after you've cut them, and then that goes in the fridge. So you need a little bit of fridge room. This is a stinky process and a messy process, so I do advise that if you are sharing your house with somebody like me and you are going to do this, make sure you check in with whoever the fridge owner is to make sure that this is okay. This is sort of a PSA, and just in case something spills or it just doesn't go the way that you planned, because these things never do, you kind of want to at least have everyone on the same team. So those are my suggestions before you start doing this. Anyways guys, stay tuned. Let's cut some meat. Okay guys, so I'm over here at the sink. I'm actually going to be cutting just on the clothes washer here, any kind of flat space. I put a plastic bag down just to keep everything contained if I do drop a fillet or spill a little bit of brine or something. You want to have it easy to clean up. So the first thing that we need to talk about is the herring. Where do you buy it? Here in St. Catharines, Peter's Tackle has whole herring. That's what you're looking for. I'm sure the grocery store does as well, but it might be more expensive because it's food grade. The herring that I'm using today is bait grade herring. I don't know the science behind it, but I'm sure it's a lesser quality than the kind that you would eat if you're pickling it or salting it, etc. So that's the first key. If you're going to cut your own bait, you will save money by processing it yourself. Cut bait seems to be a little bit more expensive, but of course time is money, and by buying it pre-done, you're basically buying a finished product. So if you have lots of time and not a lot of money, like most fishermen, you may be better off to cut your own. And that's why I'm going to show you this video. So apart from that, this process does take a while, and I recommend that you do multiple packs at once if possible, if you have the time. It's not something that's really worthwhile to do if you are just going to do one pack. Now I'm just going to show you one pack today, obviously, but the more that you can do at one time, sort of the better your savings are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the packages with a knife. You can also use rubber gloves. I happen to actually have some kind of food allergy where if I touch herring, but the skin on my hands actually just falls off. So I'm a diehard, but I definitely wear gloves, and you shouldn't be afraid of wearing gloves because it doesn't make you any less of a man if you wear the gloves. The herring, the best way to do it is to let it thaw. If I'm just doing 4 packs like this or a small batch, usually about an hour at room temperature is good. You don't want to have them too thawed out because then they'll be squishy and you won't get a good cut. And if they're too frozen, it'll be too hard to get the knife through, and you won't be able to feel the spines when you're making that fillet. Get these guys out of here. And these guys, quite honestly, are a little bit on the frozen side, a little bit on the frosty side, which I prefer to being too thawed. If they're too soft, then you're gonna make a lot of bad cuts, and that's not good because you waste strips. Now, something I should also mention is it's good to have a garbage can nearby. This tends to be a very messy process, and to eliminate as much contamination of your workspace as possible, have a garbage can nearby. So we have our head in our left hand. Take the knife right behind the head, just like a perch. Bring it down until you feel that rib cage. Turn the knife and just sawing, pressing down so that you're still feeling that spine the whole way. Keep going. This is where it's nice if it's perfectly thawed, because I'm having to work at it here. All the way down through the tail, pushing, 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 come out that side, and you've got a perfect strip. Now that's actually not entirely perfect, because that will not fit in a meathead. So I will trim that after, and I'll show you what I do to trim that. Now on this side, you can turn it over and cut it, or you can just cut it right here. So I'll cut through there just like that. The heads, if you like catfish, if your dog likes fish, feed them the heads. So we end up with two different strips. That one, which has a tail, and our original one that does not. And I didn't explain before, but you're also going to need a pair of crusty old scissors. And it's important that they're crusty and old, because they are not going to be nice after you're done. Because we're going to have to trim every single one of these strips so that it will fit in a meathead. So I'm looking for a straight line here. And this is going to take some practice until you start using meat out in the boat and you start tuning the heads. That's when you're going to figure out what kind of shape you really like. I'm all about getting straight lines on this meat, so I might trim that a bit. That looks about perfect to me. Everyone's got their own preference. This strip is going to cure up nice. Because the fillet is still very frozen, I haven't lost many scales. So after it's done in the brine, it's going to look really shiny and awesome. Now on this other side that we have with the tail, this one's going to be a little bit more tricky because it still has the backbone attached. So we're going to do some work to remove that. I'll do the same thing first. I'll cut along the stomach just so that I have a straight line. I'll bring it up here, lay the scissors down, and cut off. There's a little knob that forms, that's left over right here. And I'll cut that. Just keep doing that until I can get to that spine. And again, I'll straighten it all up. So I might cut that spine so that it's nice and straight. And get my scissors under that backbone that's still attached. Because right now, that strip is too thick to fit in a meathead. So you need to make it nice and thin. That looks about perfect to me. That's going to fit in a meathead perfectly, and that's about it. Perfect strip with a tail. You're good to go. So that's the first couple of steps. That's how I like to fillet the meat. The best way is to do this, do them all, then make your brine and start soaking. Don't do a batch, then put it in the brine. You're just wasting time. So this is just an efficient way to cut your meat and then get it brining. I'll show you how I do my brine, and then you'll be off to the races. As far as brine goes, there's lots of different options. If you look online, there's probably a dozen or so different recipes, and I've tried a few. Haven't noticed a huge difference. I've also used Atlas mics. It comes in a jar. I've used the clear. I haven't used the colored. They make green, blue, and I think red. I haven't tried those colors myself, but I do know that they work. Sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of extra color down there, especially if you're fishing deep. So for this brine, it's really simple. It's 2 parts water to 1 part salt and a ½ cup of borax. So pretty simple. Turns out really good. Shout out to Daryl Day for hooking me up with that awesome recipe. It's very simple. There's others online that use powdered milk and other additives for more color, more shine, that kind of thing. But for me, I like this recipe. It gave me a great product when I used it. So that's the brine. Now let's mix it up and get that herring in. So now that you have all your herring and you put them in the brine, next step is to go to the fridge. Alright guys, so our meat has been in the fridge for a few days. I like to do it at least 2 days. You can leave it in that brine for kind of as long as you want. It won't burn it. That's one of the nice things about using that brine as opposed to the Atlas mics or some of the store-bought stuff. So now that we've got it out of the fridge, I've just been packing it. There was one step that I did kind of leave out, and it's something that you can do, you don't have to do though, and that's just to put it in kosher salt. So you take your strips after they've been marinating for your 2 or 3 days. They're getting nice and shiny. A lot of the moisture is being drawn out by the brine and the salt, and you actually put them in kosher salt. And you can put the fillets in Ziploc bags with the kosher salt, and all that does is it continues to toughen up the strips and makes the scales really shiny. So that's something that I like to do just to add that little bit of extra toughness to the strips. Sometimes you can catch more than one fish on them if you've done this extra step. So I'll just show you the strips here, what they look like in the kosher salt. You can dry them out too much, so you definitely want to stick to 24 to 36 hours in that salt, or your strips will dry out too much. Other than that, guys, that's about it. I'm going to vacuum seal these strips so that they don't get freezer burnt. You can use regular Ziplocs if you're going to use them right away. But because I'm doing such a big batch, we got 2 cases this year, so we got lots of meat for years to come. I want to make sure that it stays good in the freezer, doesn't get freezer burned, and I have great bait when I want to go fishing. If you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments below if you like this video. If you want to see more things like this, helpful hints, salmon fishing type stuff, let me know. That's how I know what kinds of videos I should be making. Other than that, if you're still wondering, what the heck do I do with this meat? I've filleted it, I've stunk up my kitchen, I've made everyone upset, but I want to catch more fish. Lucky for you, I just started up my guide service. It's called Hooked on Niagara Guide Service. Let's do some salmon fishing. Those Screaming Kings are a blast, and if you've never used meat before, now's a great time to book a trip. It's another tool that you can add to your arsenal that's going to make you more effective out on the water. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Get outside and go fishing.
You broke in the speed and the sound of the loneliness. You're out there running just to be on the run. Yeehaw!